Let's talk about business, but maybe not in the way you're used to thinking about it. Because when you really break it down, business is a game. It's a massive, high-stakes game of strategy, of timing, and yeah, of courage. But here's the real question. What happens when your own team isn't even playing the same game?
And this quote, man, this just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? This is the core of the problem, the silent killer that can bring down even the most promising companies. It's that huge, dangerous gap between looking successful and being successful.
Just let that sink in for a second. It's kind of a terrifying question, right? It forces you to look past all the high fives and the departmental wins and ask, wait, what game are we actually playing here? And you know, there is no better story to illustrate this than a company that seemed to be winning absolutely everywhere.
So let's turn back the clock to 2016. On the surface, WeWork was this unstoppable rocket ship. And if you had looked at any single department inside that company, you would have been convinced they were just absolutely crushing it. I mean, just look at this. You can practically hear the champagne corks popping in every one of these departments. The real estate team signing leases faster than anyone in history. Marketing pumping out viral campaigns everyone was talking about. Sales couldn't sign up new members fast enough. And HR was a hiring machine, bringing in 1,000 people a month. Everyone was winning their own little game.
But here's the punchline. While all those teams were celebrating their individual wins, the company, the actual company, was losing almost $2 billion a year. The whole thing fell apart when investors finally looked past the hype and realized that a building full of winning teams had somehow created one giant, spectacular loser. Why? Because they weren't playing the company's game. So what's the lesson here? It's that you absolutely have to, define the game you're playing. A clear, unifying vision isn't just some fluffy inspirational poster on the wall. It is the North Star. It's the navigation system for every single person, and without it, all you get is noise and drift.
And you can see this play out perfectly if we look at a tale of two giants. In the late 90s, Yahoo was the undisputed king of the internet. Their vision? To create a complete internet experience. It sounds okay, but what does that even mean? It meant they chased everything, media, search, ads, and they ended up mastering nothing. Now contrast that with Google's vision. Organize the world's information. See how clear that is? Every product, every hire, every single decision could be measured against that one focused goal. And the price for Yahoo's vague endgame? A staggering 97% collapse from its peak value. They had the biggest head start you could possibly imagine, and they just fumbled it all away because they never clearly defined what winning actually looked like. Okay, so having a clear vision is absolutely crucial. But look, a vision on a poster is just words. It's totally useless if you don't have the guts to make the big, often painful moves to actually achieve it. This is where the strategy on paper meets cold, hard courage. What's this number? Well, that is how many prototypes James Dyson built before he created the first successful bagless vacuum cleaner. Think about that. That's 5,126 failures. Each one was a small move, a tiny lesson that eventually led to the one pivotal move that changed everything. It's proof that the winning moves are often built on a mountain of mistakes.
Or how about Netflix? Back in 2007, they were the masters of the DVD by mail game with those little red envelopes. It was a cash cow. Then, Reed Hastings made an absolutely pivotal move. He decided to kill his own golden goose and pivot hard into streaming. Wall Street went crazy, customers revolted, the stock crashed. It was unbelievably painful. But he just knew, that the very thing that made them successful was about to become a trap. So he chose to burn his own successful business to the ground before somebody else did it for him. And then you have YouTube in 2005. They were bleeding money, no advertisers to speak of. The logical, sensible move was to cut costs, right? Instead, they did the exact opposite. They doubled down on servers, their single biggest expense. Why? Because they understood the game wasn't about short-term profit. It was a winner-take-all race for speed and scale. That completely counterintuitive bet is the entire reason they won.
All right, so you've defined your endgame. You've got the courage to make the bold moves. But none of that matters if you don't have the right players on the field, all empowered by the right kind of culture. So your team doesn't just execute the strategy, your team is the strategy. So get this. This is the amount of money every single employee at the Ritz-Carlton, from the general manager to the housekeeper, can spend to solve a guest's problem. On the spot, without asking for a manager's permission. Now, this isn't just a policy, it's a declaration of trust. It tells every player on the team, you are empowered to win the game for our customer. It changes the whole dynamic from just following rules to actually creating incredible experiences.
Wendy Kopp at Teach for America chose her players with a much longer game in mind. You know, critics would say, how can idealistic college grads fix our schools in just 2 years? But they were missing the point. Wendy wasn't just playing the short game of staffing classrooms. She was playing the long game of changing the entire system by creating a whole generation of future leaders, principals, policymakers, you name it, who had seen the problem from the inside.
And boy, can culture be the deciding factor. I mean, just look at this contrast. At Theranos, if you found a problem with the technology, you were silenced. Knowledge was a threat to the narrative. But at Bridgewater, Ray Dalio built a culture of what he calls radical transparency, where every single mistake is analyzed and turned into a principle, a lesson that gets shared with everyone. One culture leads to total collapse, the other to decades of dominance. It's that simple.
And now, we get to the ultimate move, the grandmaster play. Because the most powerful companies, the real game changers, they don't just play the game better than everyone else. They invent a whole new game that forces everyone else to play by their rules.
Google AdWords is the perfect example. Before Google, the advertising game was about relationships. You'd call up a big website, spend a fortune on a banner ad, and just hope for the best. You were paying for eyeballs. Google didn't try to play that game. They threw the whole rulebook out. They created a new game, an auction, where relevance and results mattered more than a big budget. This didn't just win the market share, it created an entirely new market for millions of small businesses that the old game had completely ignored.
This quote, oh man, it is just perfect. You can just feel the arrogance, can't you? This is what it sounds like when an industry is winning the old game so decisively that they can't even imagine a new one exists. They were so busy defending their world of plastic CDs and record stores that they were totally blind to what was coming.
And there it is. While those executives were laughing in their boardrooms, some 18-year-old kid in his dorm room didn't ask for permission to play their game. He just invented a new one. It was called peer-to-peer file sharing. And the music industry's old game became obsolete almost overnight.
So let's bring it all together. This is the business gambit. First, you have to define your endgame with absolute crystal clarity. Then you need the guts to make those big pivotal moves to get there. Of course, you can't do any of it without choosing the right players and building a culture of trust. And finally, the ultimate move, the masterstroke, is to stop playing by the old rules and just invent a brand new game. And that brings us to the final and really the most important question. This isn't about WeWork or Google or Netflix. It's about the story you are writing. Because at the end of the day, business isn't just about spreadsheets and profits. It's about having the courage to bet on a future that maybe only you can see. So the question is, what future will you dare to build?